It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Tia Graham. Now, soccer is growing in the city of Detroit. We recently had a conversation on the Metro about the addition of a women's varsity team at Wayne State University. Detroit City Football Club has grown its footprint in Detroit and throughout Metro Detroit, quickly amassing a loyal and passionate fan base. Beginning as an idea on Belle Isle, the former recreational league is developing a new stadium. AlumniFi Field is set to open for the 2027 USL Championship season. Construction is scheduled to begin by the end of this year in the Corktown Southwest Detroit neighborhoods, pending Detroit City Council's approval. This week, Detroit City Football Club Stadium Neighborhood Advisory Council will begin to accept nominations for the council, and any Detroit resident who lives within the impact area and are over the age of 18 are eligible to serve on the council. And the community benefit meetings began last week and will continue this week, Thursday, August 28th. This meeting will allow residents to nominate themselves and come forward to serve on the council. And joining us now to talk a little bit more about the new stadium and what it means to bring the team to Southwest, we have CEO and co-founder of DCFC, Mann. Sean, welcome back to the Metro.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Of course. So, Sean, what does the new stadium say about DCFC and its commitment to the city of Detroit? Did you ever expect the recreational league to leave the fields of Belle Isle?
Well, I live in Southwest. I've been there since like 2008, 2009. And so, I started the Neighborhood Soccer League back in 2010 as like a community organizing project, and I got a Hubbard Farms team going of neighbors, and a Corktown team got going, and, all these neighborhoods in the city fielded a team. And like, we put a Belle Isle, and we didn't even have goals back then. we had PVC pipes that I drove around in my old Chrysler Sebring, and they'd hang out the window. And, if the ball hit the frame, they'd fall apart. And so to go from there, then to a group of us who got to know each other through the league and over beers on the bars of Michigan Avenue, had the idea that like Detroit should have a team, a real proper team. Even that was amateur, right? And started out Cass Tech, and to get to, then we rehab Keyworth Stadium and move there. To get to this point where, like, we're endeavoring on this, 15,000 seat stadium back in where this really all started, right? And the guys who started it, a few of us, live in Hubbard Farms, live in Corktown, and we joke we're now embarking on like first time that like a professional stadium's been built by people who live in the neighborhood, right?
Just live in the neighborhood. And I'm like such a nerd for sports documentaries. I watch a ton of them, and I just think about the rise of certain teams. For example, the Lakers. I think about Jerry Buss and where he started with it. Of course, he was, starting out so modest, so basic, wasn't really thinking it was going to be where it is today. But I think about what you all are doing and how you're starting very basic, just coming up with this idea like, hey, let's start a team in the city and see where it goes. What, honestly, if you could just go into like you just being in this space right now, what does it feel like to have those folks coming together and get into this point where you can now have a community benefits conversation with the city of Detroit?
We're so busy, it's hard to look back, but like it was 2 weeks ago now, we announced, AlumniFi coming on as our partner, which is a huge milestone for us in terms of like financing the project. And so them coming on board, and we had this big thing at the Mexican Mercado, and even despite thunderstorms, a few hundred people show up. And you're standing up there and you look out there, and it's not only those fans who've been with us since Cass Tech, but it's like neighbors walking over, and it's such a like humbling experience. And then last week, we get to the first community benefits, and it's an opportunity to like start talking more details, but still it's a broad overview at this point of like what the project is. And again, you're looking out of the room, and it's like there's a lot of faces and you've known for a long time, right? And so yeah, now we're jumping into it, and I think we have always approached the project because obviously it's been in the works for a long time before you even get to this phase. So I think we've always had our experience as residents in mind, this opportunity to get feedback from other residents, and ultimately, I think our goal is to create a stadium that's like the most community-oriented stadium possible, and we mean that genuinely because like we're in the neighborhood, right? And so if we don't do this right, we hear about it at the school pickup, or we hear about it at Honeybee, and so these are the things that like weigh on us, we want this to be additive to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so, Yeah, it's exciting to get to this point, and we got a few months here, a few more meetings.
I love that. Just walking through, going to grab coffee, like, hey, that stadium. Yeah, but I love the idea of just being able to speak and communicate with your neighbors in that way. But let's talk about the community in which you are moving into, the border of Corktown and Southwest Detroit. What about this space was a no-brainer? Is it just because you live in this space and you have been there for a while, or was this place always something that was scouted in the city?
Honestly, it was about 5 years ago we started looking for land because we realized Keyworth and Hamtramck it's a magical spot, but it was never our forever home. Yeah. And we were always tenants, and for us to keep growing, but also just stability, had to have our own venue. And so we looked at multiple sites, whether it was Milwaukee Junction or Eastern Market. Like there's all kinds of land that we were looking at. But it was eventually, and it's one of those things, like you're in the neighborhood and you got the old Southwest Detroit Hospital, and it's hard to articulate how you become numb to the blight that's in the neighborhood, right? And so it never really crossed our mind, to be honest. And also knowing that all that land's owned by all these different owners, and how would you ever assemble it? Yeah. But I think getting to know the folks at Michigan Central and talking to people in City Hall about what potentially could be down the pipeline and the possibilities, all of a sudden it started clicking, and we started getting our heads around how would we approach actually assembling the land. And it clicks that it's an amazing site, that the hospital really is a bridge between Corktown and Mexican Town. Yeah. That we have this opportunity to turn 20th Street in a commercial corridor that complements everything big and small that's been happening on Michigan Avenue and everything on Verner and Bagley. It really does bridge together these great regional destination neighborhoods. And it's an opportunity to do a stadium and do this kind of activity that's not just downtown, but bringing investments, to other parts of the city, right?
Exactly. And it's building on what's already growing within that community and in that space. But, we talk about the community benefits meetings in the council that's coming up. There will be several community benefits meetings. The next one is this week, Thursday. What do community benefits meetings ultimately determine?
So we had the first meeting. The run of show is 9 meetings basically on a fairly weekly basis. Every Thursday night, Mexican Town Mercado, that's where you'll find us. And then this next one is where the Neighborhood Advisory Council, the NAC, gets nominated and voted on by the people in the impact zone, as we were mentioning. And then from there, we go deeper into what the stadium plans with the parking deck, the housing, those components. And then, the NAC comes back to us with their thoughts and their suggestions and what they want to see in terms of mitigating the impact of the project, right? And I think this is the 17th CBO process the city's had since enacting the ordinance. And from there, we have a back and forth with the NAC, and, the goal is to get to a resolution that we take to council to, approve. And that's our goal, is to get that all worked through, before the end of the council session at the end of the year. And so that we can keep on pace for construction to be open for our 27th season.
Nice. And the new stadium will have affordable housing units and retail around a parking garage. Affordable housing is an issue nationwide, especially in Detroit, and in large part due to the cost of building, time required to get it done, the zoning and the permits, and all the other things that go along with it. How far along are plans for affordable housing, and how will you overcome those challenges? Facing cities across the U.S. So, how are we going to help mitigate that?
Yeah, I mean, our goal always was that the stadium's additive to the surrounding area, and that we want the 20th Street to be active year round. We don't want it to be a dead space, right? And so the stadium design itself, the East Grandstand, has outward facing retail for 365, year round activation, and same thing. The way the site's located, the stadium actually sets pretty far south, so away from Michigan Avenue. So we're left with this dead space. And so in terms of making 20th Street active, we envisioned a retail housing component. And we didn't want just to be a parking deck, which there already is need on Michigan Avenue for more parking. We hear it constantly. So helping the businesses already over there on Michigan Avenue, so having a parking deck. And we just didn't want that to be the entry point. And so it made sense, especially if we want this 20th Street to be active, it's housing. And for us, affordable housing made the most sense from the very beginning. Yeah. So, we're working through with partners on the affordable housing front to bring that kind of component to fruition. But what we're envisioning is a modular wrap around the parking deck. And that would be the entry point really to a new 20th Street as we envision it.
Nice. And if you're joining the Metro right now, we're talking about Detroit City Football Club and its new stadium opening up in the fall of 2027, I believe it is.
For the 27th season, starts the spring, summer 27. Yep.
Nice. Our guest is CEO and co-founder of DCFC, Sean Mann. And, in Detroit, new stadiums generally come with taxpayer subsidies. We've seen it with Comerica Park, Ford Field, and Little Caesars Arena. What kind of taxpayer support will DCFC receive as part of this project?
Yeah, so, part of, I think, who we are, but also just a degree of pragmatism and knowing where the public sentiment is. We never envisioned like typical stadiums over the last couple of generations here and across the country, using public bonds or even, the rental car tax or the hotel tax, like direct tax support. Like we never envisioned that. We always, worked on the assumption that we would own the stadium. And then, the capital stack would be our own private equity and our own private debt. And so that's been our guiding principle all along. And so, in that sense, we'd be the only stadium in Detroit, but actually in Michigan that pays property taxes. Now, like any development in the city, we are seeking Commercial Rehabilitation Act tax abatements to make sure it does pencil. But at the end of the day, like we're, paying property taxes a lot more than, a vacant hospital is paying right now.
Yes. And if you could go into the unique situation that you're in, being a person who lives in the community, been a part of the community for so long, but also now seeing community input coming into what the stadium could be or will be for that neighborhood.
Yeah, it's funny. And it's great. I've been, close to 20 years, been in the Southwest. And so, there's a lot of, I've been to my fair share of community meetings certainly on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
And so, it is a unique experience, right? And and I think that it just has shaped us going into this project as much as possible, being aware of what we need to be able to speak to and what we need to address. But ultimately, we're just a few voices of neighbors, and we realize that, for true buy-in, we have to be responsive to, the feedback we get, right? So that's what we'll be, navigating over the next couple of months here.
Yeah. And the Northern Guard, DCFC's fan base, is famously dedicated, okay? They've been packing Keyworth Stadium in Hamtramck game after game. I know for a fact that Pat Batchelor is one of those fans who's been there multiple times. And the games are rowdy and they're fun and they're inclusive. Did the Northern Guard impact the plans for the stadium in any way?
Well, in a lot of ways, and we're actually starting a series of listening sessions for fans tonight. For them, we'll walk through the plans and they'll give feedback. We're not expecting them to weigh in on structural beams and stuff like that, but it's more how does the venue feel right to them? And so in a similar sense, we're incredibly accessible. And so, at a match day, I'm just in the main concourse and I'm getting hit left and right with suggestions. And so that's from day one, been, imprinted into what you see now. So one of the most unique things is that we are the only team in North American soccer where the supporters are at midfield. So the priciest tickets are set aside for those most rabid fans, typically most pricey, but for us, it's the most affordable, accessible tickets are for the people standing at midfield. And so that's something we're carrying over into new stadium so that, when you're at the game, you're still in the foregrounds of soccer, and then the vista is going to be, those supporters singing and chanting. And then beyond that will be the train station and the city skyline.
Just sounds like an absolute amazing space to be in. And is there anything else you would like to say, especially when we talk about the next community benefits meetings coming up? Anything from the residents out there who may be interested in nominating someone or being nominated themselves? Yeah,
I think the key thing is input. Anybody in the city can give input into a process, but for this next meeting, if people want to be on the NAC or if they want to vote on the NAC, and they have to live in the impact zone and they have to be there on Thursday night. But I think the key thing to stress is throughout this whole process, the 7 meetings after this, it is open to any city residents to show up, and looking forward to jumping into it.
Awesome. Sean Mann is CEO and co-founder of DCFC, AlumniFi Stadium. Upon public approval, is set to begin at the end of the year. The next community benefits meeting is this Thursday, August 28th. Interested residents can join remotely or in person. Sean, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro, talking a little bit more about the new stadium that we're all excited to see.
Appreciate it.
Coming up on the Metro. In this week's episode of Container on the Metro, we'll get to know Chef Drummond Booz, co-founder of Vinyl Tasting, and we'll get to understand how he exposes cultural connections with each bite. You all stay right there. We'll be right back. This is the Metro.